This is CBC Vancouver News.
I think she's a good politician.
We probably thought that was a good move for her to do that.
I like her so much. I don't know. I'm really giving it a lot of thought.
Reactions straight from the riding as high-profile MLA Elenore Sturko ditches the BC United and joins the BC Conservatives. Plus,
all these homes were all underwater, and I think we're entitled to compensation for our losses.
Are you in or are you out? Abbotsford residents hit by 2021's catastrophic floods weigh whether to join a class action lawsuit against the city. Also,
it's about putting our identity back on the map.
This action plan gives us that voice.
the City of Vancouver unveils its plan to put reconciliation into action, a first in Canada. Hello, I'm Tanya Fletcher. Thanks for joining us. We begin with yet another plot twist in provincial politics and another defection from the official opposition. BC United MLA Elenore Sturko is crossing the floor to the BC Conservatives, the second one to do so in a matter of days. The CBC's Lindsay Duncombe has more on the shifting landscape just months before the fall election.
Hello. This defection, part of a seismic shift in BC politics.
Ultimately, I've made this decision to join what really is the largest grassroots movement we've seen in our province.
Elenore Sturko, former RCMP spokesperson, lesbian, and rising political star, is the second BC United MLA to leave the official opposition and join the BC Conservatives in just a few days, doubling the caucus from 2 to 4.
We're building a broad-based coalition, this grassroots movement across the province. People coming in wanting to see that change.
We're BC United. Join us.
The defections follow rapidly declining support for BC United. That's the new name for the former BC Liberals, the party of former Premiers Gordon Campbell and Christy Clark.
What we appear to be witnessing is the collapse of BC United. The wheels seem to have come off the bus.
Vancouver is the third most unaffordable housing market in the world.
The reason? The popularity of the federal Conservatives. Pierre Poilievre is campaigning against the policies of BC NDP Premier David Eby, blaming Eby and Prime Minister Trudeau for BC's high cost of living and attacking progressive drug policies.
Really, I think what is going on is the antipathy that exists across the country for Justin Trudeau, the rise of a conservative movement, which has swept across a lot of British Columbia.
The leader of the BC Conservatives is a former BC Liberal who was kicked out of the caucus for his views on climate change. The Conservatives dropped 3 candidates for views on LGBTQ rights and COVID vaccinations. BC Premier David Eby is currently ahead in the polls, benefiting from a divided right.
But if that is changing, the BC Conservatives may be a formidable foe. BC's next election is 4 months away. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
And leading up to that election, the leader of the BC United weighed in on yet that other defection to the BC Conservatives.
I'm disappointed and frankly shocked at the decision that Elenore chose to make, especially going over to a party that she has long disavowed, both to me personally and to our caucus, for being far too extremist.
Meanwhile, one political scientist calls the momentum for the Conservatives right now explosive.
Does a lot for the Conservatives, does a lot to bring in a strong candidate, a well-known candidate, that well-known in her constituency, maybe even well-known across the province, and a moderating candidate, somebody who takes a little bit of the sting out of some of the accusations of extremism that the BC Conservatives might face in an election.
So what do Elenore Sturko's constituents think about her switch? We asked some of them in her South Surrey riding today.
Personally, I'm not sure there's much difference in between her current party and the Conservatives, but I thought there might be some kind of reaction from some other voters, but I don't think there will be.
I think she's a good politician, and I guess if she feels her interests are more aligned with them, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, those two parties are similar.
We probably thought that was a good move for her to do that. Just because the Conservatives are a little bit more visual, a little bit known a little bit more than the United.
Oh, that's no good. I tried to
I like her so much. I don't know. I'm really giving it a lot of thought.
If her policies and opinions align better with Conservative Party and she's not getting through from the BC United Liberal side, then I'm sure like it's fine. Like you gotta do what you gotta do. But if it's just for opportunity and you don't really care about the community you're serving, you're just doing it for your own career growth or whatever, then that kind of looks shady.
It's very interesting to see that she does support this party that kind of doesn't really respect her identity to the core, so it'll be interesting to see.
In other news today, a 50-year-old woman has been found dead in Chilliwack, and it's now being investigated as a homicide. Her body was discovered yesterday inside a home near Vetter Crossing. The death is considered suspicious, so the Integrated Homicide Investigation Team is taking over the case. But so far, there are no details on how she died or about any possible suspects. Well, rain and dense fog have made for a difficult search trying to find 3 missing climbers northeast of Squamish. The group set out in Garibaldi Park last week. They're said to be very experienced climbers. Squamish Search and Rescue says the last known communication with them was Friday morning.
Mount Atwell is a very serious mountain. It's very complex terrain, lots of hazard related to rock falls and cornices and avalanches. So navigating this terrain in bad weather is already very difficult.
Rescue crews tried using a drone to help find them, as well as a military helicopter, but neither could fly well enough in the poor weather. Well, people who live in Abbotsford's Sumas Prairie must decide whether they want in or out of a class action lawsuit against the city. It represents victims of the catastrophic 2021 floods and was certified by a judge last week. As John Hernandez reports, that lawsuit alleges the city could have done more to prevent disaster.
Yeah, so all these homes were all underwater.
As Dave Martins drives through Abbotsford's Sumas Prairie, the traumatic memories come flooding back.
The water was coming over the road down over here, and it just came rushing in like a river. And by the time I came here, we stopped the house, went over to the barn, the water was lapping at the barn door. Sorry, kids. This is tough to look at, I know.
His property, one of 1,400 submerged by the 2021 flood. The waters swept through his home and his chicken barn.
There was more than 40,000 birds that we lost in the barn. And yeah, that was a tough one. But there's nothing we could do. There's still days where, I'll have nightmares. I'm meeting with a counselor, and my wife is as well.
As of last week, Martins and hundreds of other flood victims are part of a class action lawsuit against the city seeking compensation for the damage. The effort was spearheaded by 2 of his neighbors and certified by a judge last week.
We're able to aggregate all of the claims and move it forward as one without putting the psychological and economic toll on each individual class member.
The lawsuit alleges the city of Abbotsford was negligent by failing to close floodgates at its pump station during the Atmospheric River event in 2021. It claims the failure significantly contributed to the flow of waters into the Sumas Prairie.
If the flood boxes had been closed when they ought to have been, according to the Barrowtown procedures, there would have been lower flood levels and less area flooding.
The city of Abbotsford said it wouldn't comment on the active legal matter, but court documents show Abbotsford maintains that the flooding was caused by the Nooksack River and that it opposes the application for certification. The legal battle has left residents like Martins wondering if the destruction could have been prevented.
I want to know that there's a future for my children farming and agriculture. I want to know that we're safe, that we don't encounter this again, that the changes are made. And I think we're entitled to compensation.
It's now up to residents to decide whether they want to opt out of the lawsuit as this fight makes its way from the floodplains to the Supreme Court. John Hernandez, CBC News, Abbotsford.
There are new questions about one of the 4 suspects in the killing of BC Sikh activist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. This suspect was arrested just before a large gathering of the Sikh separatist movement, some considered terrorists by India. And as the CBC's Evan Dyer explains, it has heightened fears that the plot to kill Nijjar could be just one of many.
Of the 4 men charged in the murder of Sikh leader Hardeep Singh Nijjar, one stands out. Amandeep Singh yet to enter a plea on any of his charges. Arrested months before the others on the eve of a high-profile wedding that brought together a number of big names on the Government of India's enemies list. Police seized this pistol, which had an extended magazine and distinctive coral snake engraving, similar to a pistol he had in this video posted to social media last year. It's not clear where or when the video was shot, and Singh's lawyer told CBC News he had no comment on it. Police have never said what Amandeep Singh was doing in Brampton, but he doesn't live there all the time. That weekend wedding last November had a notable guest list.
You would refer to them as probably Sikh leadership across the country, especially those that are involved in the Khalistan movement.
Moninder Bol is a Khalistani, or Sikh separatist, who was a close collaborator of Hardeep Singh Nijjar.
Now it seems like there's a lot of dots that could be connected for that weekend.
One of those invited was Gurpatwant Singh Pannan, an old friend of Santokh Singh Khela, father of the groom. Pannan is presumed to be India's #1 target. He lives under tight security in New York since U.S. authorities accused Indian government officials of trying to kill him. At the last minute, Pannan cancelled his trip to the wedding.
I come with a lot of liability. I did not want it to, weigh them under my security threats and bring in, all that attention which I bring in when I go and join it.
The host says that since the wedding, he's been visited by CSIS and told to take precautions. He and the others have no illusion that the danger to them has gone away.
There will be more teams, there are more people running around or everywhere, we are not scared from them, scared out all of them, we're not afraid from the die.
While the exact events of that weekend may only emerge at court, Sikhs who've spoken to CBC News say they don't believe the timing was a coincidence, and they also don't believe the Government of India has given up on its intention to kill them. Evan Dyer, CBC News, Ottawa.
The province says it continues to investigate last month's state-sponsored cyber attack and that 22 government inboxes may have been compromised.
A handful of these inboxes contain sensitive personal information on 19 individuals. These were employee files, and with one exception being an employee who had family information on their inbox.
It's believed 3 separate attempts were made to breach government systems in the month leading up to the attack. To the Williams Lake First Nation now, and it has signed a memorandum of understanding with the province and with RCMP. It's the next step in investigative work at the former St. Joseph's Mission residential school site. The nation says it has conducted archival research, site analysis, and interviews with former students. They've determined that Indigenous children died, and remains can likely be found on the old grounds. So now officials will look at moving forward with targeted excavations at the site. The City of Vancouver has unveiled its plan to put the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples into action. And as Michelle Gassoub tells us, it's believed to be a first in Canada, and for many, a long time coming.
At the Vancouver Convention Centre, a ceremony unveiling the city's plan to implement UNDRIP.
Makes Vancouver the first city in Canada, if not the world, to take the UN Declaration and use it as a framework for reconciliation, working with the local First Nations.
The plan was developed by the city and members of the Squamish, Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh nations. It includes 79 calls to action and covers areas from affordable housing and revenue sharing to policing, public art and city design.
It's about putting our identity back on the map. It's also about the rebuilding of Indigenous economies, and sometimes that comes with understanding of who we are and understanding that we do have strong nations that want to build or rebuild our economies that once were thriving for thousands of years.
UNDRIP was first adopted by the UN in 2007 and was initially opposed by Canada. But since then, UNDRIP legislation has been passed at the federal and provincial levels. The city began work on this document in 2021.
Every single member in that chamber at City Council is 100% behind this. And so this crosses, every single party in there wants this to happen.
Across the country, Ottawa marked 5 years since another key report, the inquiry on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. There were criticisms those calls for justice have largely gone untouched.
With the majority showing minimal to no progress, this failure is not acceptable to our people.
But those here say this plan is different. They say accountability is baked in, as are Indigenous teachings.
And the values of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh have really been the guiding force in how we've developed this, and I think that will continue on into implementation.
This action plan gives us that voice. We're not going through the Supreme Courts of Canada to say that we, Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh, have a right to be here.
The plan will be formally introduced to City Council on June 25th. Michelle Gassoub, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, BC's new rules kicked in today designed to protect cyclists and pedestrians from vehicles. Drivers must now keep a minimum distance of 1 meter when passing where the speed limit is 50 kilometers an hour or less. And on roads faster than that, it's 1.5 meters away.
If everyone obeys it, then great. But we know from the engineering hierarchy of controls that setting kind of rules and expecting everyone to behave is not extremely effective in preventing deaths and injuries on our roads.
The province says drivers caught violating the new rules could face up to $2,000 in fines and 6 months jail time. The federal government is taking more steps to protect the remaining 74 southern resident killer whales off our waters. Transport Canada says mandatory speed limits in areas the whales often swim will help protect them from noise and contaminants and also give them better access to prey. Boats will have to slow now to a minimum of 10 knots in some zones off Vancouver Island until the end of November. Ottawa also says commercial salmon fisheries will be closed into the fall around the mouth of the Fraser River and along Swiftsure Bank, where the whales often forage. Still to come, outrage over Canada's largest seniors advocacy group teaming up with Big Tobacco. How a BC woman discovered the connection after the break. A BC woman is going public after she discovered Canada's largest advocacy group for seniors teamed up with a surprising partner. As the CBC's Erica Johnson explains, the group granted a tobacco giant access to its members.
Ellen Gould enjoys the fresh air of Powell River, once called the least polluted city in the world. So she was curious when an email arrived from CARP, the Canadian Association of Retired Persons, inviting her to take part in a focus group to explore alternatives to cigarettes, like vaping products. To her surprise, the project was sponsored by tobacco giant Rothmans, Benson and Hedges.
I was just completely shocked that CARP would do this. You can't advocate for the well-being of seniors and then get in bed with big tobacco.
Gould, who happens to be a public policy researcher, knows that vaping might be smoke-free, but it's still addictive, and the aerosol can contain potentially toxic chemicals.
Haven't we taken enough from big tobacco? This is a generation that had to overcome their addictions.
Rothmans is behind a campaign called Unsmoke Canada, saying people should stop smoking cigarettes. It touts vaping products as a potentially healthier alternative, products Rothmans now sells. But this tobacco researcher argues that vapes or e-cigarettes don't help most smokers quit tobacco.
They either return to being exclusive cigarette smokers, or they become dual users of both e-cigarettes and cigarettes, and that's even worse.
He argues the end goal of Rothman's campaign, get government to change regulations so vaping's not included under the Tobacco Act.
That's what they want to achieve, legitimacy. And CARP is providing a platform for that legitimacy, which is absolutely wrong.
The tobacco company said research with CARP's members is legal, appropriate, and essential. Gould emailed CARP to cancel her membership. The response in an email to go public from the association's president? Shrug. We have about 250,000 members. Does she quit her family every time she has an argument? CARP said it teamed up with Rothmans, Benson and Hedges after the company approached it, adding it thought raising the topic of smoking and alternatives was interesting. The organization declined to say how much money Rothmans offered it or whether the relationship will continue. Erica Johnson, CBC News, Vancouver.
And you're looking at a live shot of Canby Street and City Hall there. One more day of lingering showers before the sun dries us out. Your 5-day forecast is coming up next.
Hey, I'm Rohith Joseph. Vibin' is the new show all about discovering great new songs and fresh artists from across BC and beyond. Stream Vibin' on CBC Listen.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Our Darius Madavi is here with a look at the forecast. And Darius, you weren't kidding about Sunday being a soaker. Sounds like it was many parts of the province too.
Yes, that's right. We saw widespread rainfall pretty much everywhere except where we really wanted it, up in the northeast, which didn't get all that much rain, but pretty much everywhere else, especially here on the coast, got a lot of rain. Some places like Port Mellon getting as much as 80 millimeters of rain. Other places like Coquitlam setting records for the rate of rainfall in this month in June. So a lot of rainfall coming to many places, but that is going to be phasing out over the next 48 hours or so. Tomorrow we still have a little bit of that activity as this next system starts to roll off. So building once again, I know many people are already seeing some of that rain going to continue into tomorrow morning. But then by the afternoon, mostly has worn off here in Vancouver and then is going to continue maybe just a couple loose showers mid-afternoon, but then completely drying up. Although parts of the island and parts of the coast will still get a little bit of that rain tomorrow. But by Wednesday, a ridge of high pressure is building in and we are going to have really nothing but sunshine as soon as that cloud clears out, probably early Wednesday morning for some places. But generally, especially if we zoom out to the rest of the province, nothing but sunshine after tomorrow. We still have some risk of thunderstorms tonight in parts of the Okanagan, the southeast, and then returning to some places like up in the Peace and the central parts of the province tomorrow, some thunderstorms. But after that, really just sunshine. You can see that here. All of it clearing up and then lots of sunshine coming in, except for maybe the odd bit of rain coming up to the northwest. So very sunny conditions coming, and temperatures are going to be coming up as well over the next few days, especially if you find yourself a little bit further inland here in Metro Vancouver or in the interior, because the Okanagan could very well hit 30 degrees by the end of this week. Here in Vancouver, especially inland places, we could hit mid-20, actually all of Metro Vancouver hitting mid-20s, as well as much of the island. So very warm conditions on the way, but first we have to get through a little bit of a more active day, some sunshine along with all that rain that you saw there, especially afternoon tomorrow. But pretty much, just Tanya, lots of sunshine. That's a different forecast.
Yeah, no kidding. Night and day compared to last week.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks so much, Darius.
Thank you.
That is your late news for this Monday, June 3rd. For news anytime, anywhere, you can download the free CBC News app. And you can always find us online, our website, cbc.ca/BC. Thanks for being with us. Have a great night.